Over the years, you've seen all the changes in yoga in this country. Filling in a little here. Can you tell us what it was like when it began back in the 70s, the hippie years, when you first met Swami Rama? Would you mind talking about some of the pertinent experiences you've had with Swamiji? I think I have. And what led you to decide to turn your life towards pursuing his message? When I was a little boy, my grandmother had unusual abilities. She was a healer. She also could see the future, to a certain extent. But she never showed off, never would accept money. She was very discerning about who she would allow to know that she could do that and actually give what we call readings, if you remember. She belonged to a spiritualist church. You know what that is? Like the Rosicrucians or people who have certain interest in psychic phenomena. They still have them. In Chicago, they were all over the place. Right? She sometimes would take me when she thought I would behave. That was very dangerous to assume. Because I would peek and watch all the readings going on, and the laying on of hands and all that. And I thought, God, this is weird. And so I'd ask her afterwards. She said, I'll tell you later. Now, because I saw her ability, and because in my mind she was I loved her and she was trustworthy, I knew there was something really there. And of course the nuns at the school where I went, they thought I was, in cahoots with the devil or something when I'd bring it up. And I'd challenge them with some of the stuff I saw in these meetings. So I was persona non grata in grammar school, of course. But anyway, I knew there was something there, and I thought, I could never let go of it. I got to pursue that one day and satisfy myself. So as the years went on, I went to school. And I always searched. I tried different things. I went to a few psychic meetings, and I thought, no. Because my grandmother warned me that most of them were phonies. I said, yep. That was for sure. So I was always skeptical, critical, very cautious. And as you know, I had a series of dreams one year. And I was involved with somehow in the dreams they were trying to tell me they were devas, floating down, talking to each other, and I'm in front of them, and they're saying, we got to get Justin to the healing seminar. I said, hey, I'm over here. What are you talking about? And then all of a sudden, like Sesame Street, the number 9 came at me, which was about 4 stories high, and went right through me. 9, what's 9? 3 nights in a row, each one connecting to the next. And finally I saw a place that had a lodge, a small pond, birch trees. And I said, I don't know what this place is. And I was inside with a group of people I never knew, and we're waiting for some stranger to come out and talk to us. That was the end of the dream. 4th night, nothing there, so I just threw it away. Next day I'm on the L track, healing seminar, September 9th. And being the brilliant professor I am, I made no connection. So I go home and tell Davy, and everywhere I'd run around Chicago, this was in June. June! I kept running into that damn sign. And I kept telling her, and she finally says, I'm so tired of hearing you running into that sign. Will you go to it? All right. But I had no car, because I had sold it so that we could stay in Europe. So a friend of mine at Loyola, where I was teaching, said, hey, I know a woman who's going up there. In fact, she's the head of this organization, this crazy organization called the Himalayan Institute. Oh, what's her name? Ann Elwood. She's Irish. Got a chance here. So I called her up, and when she heard I went to Notre Dame, well, that was it, you know. So I said, why don't you pick me up and I'll drive you, in all fairness to you. Okay, so she picked me up with her niece who was going to Northwestern, and Ann and I just got along famously, driving up to Milwaukee, 1 hour past Milwaukee to Plymouth, Wisconsin, and as we drive in, I said, I know that pond, and those birch trees, and that lodge. Where do I remember that? Yeah, it's very brilliant. And then I go to my room and register, and she says, would you come back and complete your registration later? I said, sure. So I come back, and Mama, that's her name, Ann Elwood, we call her Mama. She calls me over because she wants to introduce me to Swami Rama. And the big, you know, husky guy is standing there, and I hold out my hand. It was kind of weak, and I thought, this guy's got nothing much. So I said, I'm not here to win his personality. I want to hear what he's got to say about healing. Okay. And suddenly, I'm heading over to the girl with the registration, and I realized I didn't give her enough money. And my credit card is run out, and I don't have any money. What am I going to do? Well, I'll do the best I can and maybe tell her they can hold on to the credit card. As I'm walking there, suddenly out of the corner of my eye, I see Swamiji on the other side of the room come running across. And he looks at the woman and he points to me and says, don't charge him. And he walks away. Did he know? Of course not. So, but that was nice of him. Why did he do that? And so the afternoon started. And I thought, not bad. He could work on his English a little. And I'm getting critical. You can't tell anybody this, I feel so. Boy, doesn't say his R's right, you know. I mean, it's too many S's and shahs and anyway. Oh, my God. And I began to get very harpy. And I kind of reflected, why am I so critical of the man? He didn't charge me. I just, what am I here to expect? And so at lunchtime I was telling the people, you know, you understand his English? And they started getting away from me, and I was all by myself. And I said, I got to get out of here. I would have drove home if I had a car. I was so upset with myself. And so I went for a walk for 2 hours in the woods. I was asking the woods, help me out of this mess. What's going on? And we were to meet at 4 o'clock in the woods, and everyone do chanting. I'm over the side like this, you know. Everybody's chanting. I'm over sitting by myself. So, what is going on? Now, we go to bed, and we get up, and there's one more talk. And I dread having to endure another hour. So I go and I sit, and I don't even sit in front. I sit off to the side. So I got his profile. I'm ashamed to look at him in the face. And then something happens. He started articulating the very desires that emerged when I was in Europe, what I felt was missing from my life. a grounding spirituality that you prove as you go. And he kept saying things that I would normally think about. And all of a sudden, energy started to flow in me. And I was just, awestruck. That's all I can say. By the end of the lecture, I was vibrating, shaking. And I said, we got to get together. I want to pursue what you've got. And everybody raised their hand and asked questions, and he went like this. And he walked over to me and he stuck out his hand. And then I knew he knew. And that's how it all started. And I said, when can I see you? He said, how about tomorrow? So I come the next day, I'm giving you a mantra. What's a mantra? And I'm teaching you how to meditate myself. And he did. And then he says, now you go and teach others. And you're the first man I have given it to in the West. So I took his course 17 times, because I'm a slow learner. And then I realized after a while, don't take his notes down, see what it provokes in you. And that's what I put down as I listened to him. And that's how it all started. Then we had to look for different places, and finally we found this place in Glenview, which was condemned because of the previous owner, but it was wide open and everybody had forgotten about it, so we got it at a good price, and people made donations. And then he said, I've got to go to India, and I need a manager. And Anne, Mama, she runs a restaurant on the south side of Chicago. Haven't I told you this? You want me to go on? All right. So she can't always get over there, so we needed a manager. And there was one Methodist minister, Larry Bolden, comparable to my age, who was so eager to run the place, Be careful what you wish for. You follow me? So I didn't want it. I just want to teach. I don't want to be an administrator. So Larry's offered it. Oh, he's thrilled. Just thrilled. This is it. The plum of his career. However, he was associated with the University of Chicago, which is the Harvard of the Midwest. And the bishop and his cronies called Larry in, and they said, Larry, we want to offer you the chaplaincy at the University of Chicago. That's the plum. Really? You have free schooling for you and your family. You'll have a salary. Look at the prestige you'll have. Chaplaincy of the University of Chicago. Wow. And then they put in the kicker. However, you're kind of connected with this Eastern organization. It might be better if you, in other words, make a choice, buddy. You can't have both. He chose Chicago. And he didn't have the guts to tell Mama. He just left one day and called her up. So what is she going to do? Who does she call? No. Okay, I'll help you. So I taught at Loyola in the day and went out there and became administrator at night. Every night to midnight. Davy came in and was my secretary. We had no heat. You don't want to be in a room without heat in Chicago winters. Every day, every moment. Now, I had to play a game with all the debts that were coming in, because the money was very slow. So this company would call up and say, hey, where's our money for the plaster? And I say, it's on its way, but my secretary's ill, fib. But she'll get it to you as soon as she gets back. You have my word on that. Uh-huh. And then this guy'd call up and say, what about the chandeliers where you've ordered? Oh, we'll get that built. I had to just play hopscotch. It was so much fun. And then there was Joe Lubinek. Joe was a marvelous electrician, very good student of Swamiji. And he was in charge of putting lighting in all the halls of this place. And I thought his mission in life was illuminate the world. And I had to grab him at times. I said, Joe, you have so many lights in here, we could do surgery. Cut it down, will you please? So this went on. So one day, Davy was under the weather because she had been working so hard, in the cold, and she was wearing gloves that were cut off at the fingers so she could type on the old IBM with the spinning ball. So she was getting, and Joe says, come over here, Davy. And he had a flask. And he pours this, and I was watching him, and it was steaming milk. And he says, take that. She took it and, wow. Just perked up like that. And he said, take this every day. Just take one a day. Don't worry. There'll always be enough. I thought, what does he mean by that? So I had to pay attention, me. What's going on here? So I ignored it. So one day, one of the people who were putting up ceiling and became ill or something, and Joe gave him a glass, and he felt wonderful. I thought, what's going on here? So one day I'm under the weather, finally. And Joe spots it and he says, come on, Jess, have some. And I drank it and I thought, oh my God, what an elixir. Joe, what's the recipe? He just smiled, wouldn't tell me. I said, okay. And he says, just help yourself. Why don't you take one a day? Okay. So one day I'm pouring and I empty it out and I feel bad. Oh, what if somebody needs it, not just me? So I put it back up and I feel bad, About 15 minutes later I come back and there's Joe pouring out more. I said, that's not possible. It was empty. And I go over and I open it up. It was right to the brim. But I emptied it. Something is going on here. So I waited some days until finally it was empty one day. And I put the tight lid on as tight as I could because a phone call said, hey, O'Brien, we need you. Okay. And I put sawdust next to it so I could tell if somebody moved this thing. I was LSI here, So I run to the phone and I'm clocking myself. I'm trying to see if did anybody get near it. I can't see anybody near it. And I'm watching. 90 seconds pass. I get up, I run over, open it up, it's filled to the brim. Joe, come here. What's going on? You're not going home until you tell me. He says, all right. And Swamiji left. He handed me this flask, He said, Joe, give this to anybody that's a little under the weather. Okay. And when you bring it home at night, do not wash it out. Simply leave it on your sink. So the Davis came in, took care of it. So one day, it was in March, we're standing around kind of joking and I reach for it, grab it, and I pour, and I finish it, and it slips out of my hand. And there was a glass lining, and it shattered. And instantly my mind said, Swamiji's coming. Next day he walked in. And he came up and he hit Teresa right on the back. Really hard. Hi, Tree! Now, there was something underneath that slap, meaning he got rid of whatever was bothering her. He often would do that way. He'd hide what he was doing under something that would distract you in a different direction. And so we started building. That lasted about a year and a half, and he calls me in one day and says, just find a bigger place. Okay. So I started hunting around in those days, making phone calls, going on the computer. And suddenly I realized that there was this seminary available out in Pennsylvania. I thought, would we want to be there? I thought it was 2 hours from New York, hour from Philadelphia. That wouldn't be too bad, out in the mountains of Pocono. So I said, Swami, I think I found this place. He says, okay, call the priest up, tell me you'd like to come up and have an inspection. All right. So I did. And he sent 2 of the students with me. And the 3 of us flew out. The priest met us in Scranton Airport, drove us. And the moment we hit the top entrance, because it's a 400-yard winding path down, wide open, forest on both sides, 435 acres. When I saw that, I said, this is it. I just knew it. And so we spent a day overnight, and the 2 guys I had with, they were picky. Oh, look, this brick is... I said, so what? We can fix it. So we came home, and then Swami called us all in for a meeting with some other people, his officers in the institute. He said, well, what do you guys think? And they've started naysaying it. This isn't what. And Swami looks at me and says, what do you think, Jess? This is the place, Swami. Get it. He called them up. They wanted 1.5. We offered them 1.2. And they said, you have 48 hours. Otherwise the deal's off. They accepted it. Because they got it for nothing. So they made $1 million. Tax-free. And then he sent me out 9 days. He said, go out and win the town over for us, Just. So I marched up and down the town, introducing myself. We're not the Moonies. We're not hippies. I'm Dr. O'Brien from Notre Dame. Oh, Notre Dame. Well, that helped a lot. But I wasn't satisfied. So I remembered what the priest told me, that there were 2 spinster sisters who knew everything in town and everybody. And they loved Notre Dame. I said, thank you. I called them up, introduced myself. Oh, what can we do to help you? Well, I'd like to have a party for all the heads of the little commercial enterprises in town, the ministers, the principals of the high school. Do you suppose you could help me get them? We'll get them out there for you, Dr. Brian. 65 people came on Friday night. And I provided them with the finest cuisine that they love. Sugar cookies and cider. So I stood before them for an hour and said who we were. We're not going to go to Scranton. We're going to buy from you. And we kept our promise. And we're here to create an educational institute and a wellness center, because our MDs were coming out. I explained who they were, what their backgrounds were, and at the end of the hour, I wanted to see what the reaction was. Any questions? Dead silence. I thought, oh God, I failed. And all of a sudden, one of the ministers gets up and he says, Dr. O'Brien has been very candid and frank with us. We've seen him the last 3 days, and I have a good feeling about this man. I think we ought to give him a chance. Yeah! That was it. I joined the Rotary Club. For 1 year, and then Swami said, that's enough, I'm not going to waste money on you and that Rotary. That's how it all happened. They still were suspicious of us. So they were reluctant, accepting of our presence. Oh well. And then we rented a store in New York at 5th and 14th, ideal location. And that became our bookstore. And we'd funnel people from there out to the Institute, because it was only a 2-hour drive through the country. It was beautiful. And he said, just you go in there and do all the teaching. Okay. So I went in, I wrote all the brochures and everything, and I did all the meditation and the wellness training at the Institute, and a couple of the other people came in and did the hatha. And we finally had a couple of people who just stayed there and ran the store. I got to tell you what happened one day at the store. Swamiji asked me and Davy to drive him into New York because he was going to go on to India. He said, "Well, come on in. We'll have some fun." And he took us out to lunch at an Indian restaurant, of course. We had sabzi, rice and dal and tilk. And all of a sudden when the meal came, Swami stood up and yelled at "This is crap!" And he threw it. "I want this meal done again." Everybody's looking at it. And they shuddered. They don't fool around with Swami. They recognized who this, they could just tell, you don't fool with this man. This is a Swami. And they go in the kitchen, and he followed them right in the kitchen. You could hear him yelling at the cook. You know why? They used artificial ghee. And he knew that would hurt us. You cooked the meal all over with real ghee. And we waited. It was a great meal. But get this. When the meal was over, he went back in the kitchen and gave the guy a $100 bill for a tip. That's the way he was. Then the fun started. He says, "Just let's go shopping." Okay. Because with him, you couldn't buy. He had to buy everything. I said, "What do you want, Jess? You want a new suit?" "No, I don't want a suit. I don't wear suits. Come on. How about a shawl?" "No, I got enough shawl." "All right, well, I want to go test these shawls. They're from Scotland. Let's see how good they were." He was a connoisseur of rugs, shawls, jewels, all kinds of things. This guy knew. So we walk in, and the very formal New York guy behind the counter. And so I'm just, "Let me see that bolt. How about that bolt?" "Where'd you get this stuff?" "Is this from China?" It was an insult. It was from Scotland, And suddenly Swamiji goes, "Out." Sometimes his master would literally take his spirit because he wanted him to do something. And there the body would be. Like that. And I see this, and the guy behind the counter is getting, and I'm distracting. "Oh, sir, let's have that bolt over there, huh? Yeah, my friend's fine." And he just said, "Teresa, take care of him." And so I'm just like this, Take him out of the store. He can barely walk, but take him out. I'll take care. "Sir, could I see that bolt through?" "No, not good. Let's try that one over there." I'm trying to distract him, and so I'm watching. Teresa finally gets him outside. And I said, "Sir, we'll have to come back when you get better bolts. See you." And I open the door, and Swami's finally come back. "What happened, Jess?" "What do you mean what happened? You know what happened. You took off." "Oh, okay." Then we said, "Well, let's go to the store. I want to check on the store, how it's doing, encourage the people there, because he could pick up their spirits." They worked very hard. Our store was located ideally on the corner of 5th and 14th. It's still there, but it belongs to somebody else. Anyway, we walk in, and there aren't too many people. I was surprised. It was a weekend. And the head guy there, who I knew very well, Swami says, "How's business?" He says, "Swami, we're doing poorly, and it's getting close to Christmas time, and I can't understand." "Oh, really?" No. This is what Swamiji did. He just stepped back, and the guy got distracted by a customer, and Swamiji turns his head like this, and he looks down. And I'm watching them saying, "Uh-oh, something's going to happen. I got to watch this." He looks down, and he gets up. "Jess, I'm going back to the department, but you come in 45 minutes with Davy." "Okay, Swan." Something said, "Just stay here." So I just stood in the store, and all of a sudden, people started to come in. More. It was people together like this. I could hardly get out of the store in a half hour. I had to fight my way. They did more business that afternoon than the entire month. I wonder why. Now the more fun starts when we get to his apartment. Boy, this is all coming back so vividly. This is years ago. My memory's still hanging on. We get up to his apartment, and Knock on the door, no answer. I said, I know he's in there, I can feel it. Knock again, the door opens up slowly. And he sees it, it's just the two of us. And he says, Davy, he pulls his hand like this, you know how it's the Indian way. Davy, please be kind. And she's looking at him. We walk in. Davy had packed his suitcases so tight that when he went to open them, they exploded. And there were clothes on the windowsill. He blamed himself, not her. And so we just had a ball. He said, I can't take all this. Come on, let's sit down on the ground. Let's figure out who we can give it to. We had moved. Let's give this to Mary. All right, how about this one to Frank? Good. Swamiji, I want your jogging suit. And I got that, and I still use it. That's the only thing I wanted. And I got it. And so we'd take the rest of it back in our car to hand it out to the students when we got back there and say, this is from Swamiji. This is a nice gift from him. Okay. And the rest we said we'd give it to Goodwill when we got back to Honesdale. Okay. And then he said, all right, you take me to the airport. Gladly. And so we took him to the airport. Bye, Swam. See you in 3 months. Anytime we went with him, we had an adventure. There was always something that was going to go on. I couldn't wait because I got to see what's going to go on today. Whoa. He was traveling once in a plane from Frankfurt to London. He was doing some experiments with some German scientists. And when he's on a plane, he tends to go to sleep and take off, you know, because he's got things to do in this world. Besides sit on his butt and sleep on the trip. And all of a sudden one of the engines goes out. Everybody panics. And the woman next to him stirs him up. He says, oh, what's wrong? It's all your fault. You're snoring and you're causing that engine. He says, excuse me. My sleeping is allowing the other engine to propel properly. So don't bother me. You know, he told me about that one when he got there. Chicago enjoyed Swamiji. Paper used to give us good articles. Even the police department came out. They liked what we were doing. Sent some of their men there to learn some stress management. Honesdale was a beautiful 3 acres. And Martin Grider, who was a student who lived about a mile away, I got to know him very well. Martin Grider was very much like me. He wanted to learn as much as he could. So he had a lovely wife, Colleen. And I often had dinner at their house. We just got along very well. And one night, Martin was had an appointment with Swamiji. And the appointment was for 7 o'clock. And Swamiji was to have a speech, to give a talk that night, that Friday night. He often talked on Friday night rather than Saturday night. And Martin discovered that every time he'd have an appointment with Swamiji, when he'd come, he'd forget his questions. And he couldn't understand this because he had a good memory. But the moment he came into the presence of Swamiji, you know, remember that time I had with on the Mayama, when I lost my anger. Anyway, so Martin this time wrote it all out. He said, he's not going to fool me this time. I know he's doing this to me, you know. So he came in and he had it in his pocket. He's just keep his hand on it. So they came in, and of course, he pushed ahead of his wife to Swamiji, and Swami turns to his, Colleen, how are you and how's the children? Huh? Tell me about them. Martin, so they continued talking, and how's your daughter doing over in Oregon? And she'd tell them, and there'd be pause, and Martin would, and Swami would say, and how's your garden coming? You know, the minutes are ticking away, huh? More and more and more. And Martin is starting, I've got to get these questions in. I've been waiting weeks. And finally, Swami said, and Swami said, oh, I'm sorry. I've got to get ready because I have to talk in 3 minutes. And Martin, oh, he's crestfallen. So he gets up and they thank, please come back again. So he would say, and as Martin reaches for the doorknob, Swamiji says, Martin, he says, yes? You wanted to know, bon, bon. He gave him 5, exactly as they're written on the sheet, with the answers. And Martin is ready to faint. But how did you, Martin, the moment you think, I know. Think about that. Why? Because he loved him. Swamiji is peeking in on all of us. Because he loved us. He wanted to take care of us. So he knew the questions he wanted. And look what he did. He elaborated them right in the row, gave him the answers. Now he did one more thing for Martin. And he shared it with me, right almost as it happened. Swamiji was planning to go to New York to lecture. He had an invitation there. He was to leave Friday or Saturday night. This was Monday. But in the meantime, the Lutheran Church of Glenview, to which Martin belonged, arranged to have a talk by Swamiji on Friday night. The talk was at 7 o'clock, and Swami's plane to New York was leaving at 5. Hang on for this one. So they called Martin before he knew about Swamiji leaving for New York and said, hey, your boss is going to be talking to me. Martin said, oh, well, that's wonderful. A few minutes later, he gets a call. This is Swamiji, Martin. Oh, yeah. Can you take me to the O'Hare Airport on Friday night? And Martin thinks, oh, what time? 5 o'clock. Sure. Okay. He puts it down and says, this is going to be fun. So he doesn't say anything to anybody. Doesn't even say it to Swamiji. He just watches. Rolls in, gets him to the airport at 5. And in those days, you could walk onto the plane with the person. And he said, I'm going to check everything. Because Martin was very much like me, very empirical, you know. So he walked all the way onto the plane, saw Swami get in the seat, walked out, and just stood there and watched that plane, clocking it. 5:15, it starts taking off, and he's in the air. 5:30. Now he's got to talk at 7. He doesn't say anything to the people. Next morning, phone rings. His friend, boy, your Swami was a great talker. He was amazing. We loved him. We're going to invite him back again. He answered all our questions. And Martin says, oh my God, how did he do that one? 2 places at once. So that was Chicago. It was exciting times. Really exciting times. Huh? And then we moved out to Honesdale. And we even started a college there, remember? We were offering an MA degree. He used me again. I went and I talked Scranton University into making us an extension of them. It would be offered through Scranton, but it would be done. And I met the vice president. He liked me, and Notre Dame and all that nonsense. So we just charmed them, and they accepted us. And that went on for 2 years, and people got a few MAs. Like, what's our girlfriend's name out in California? Linda.
Linda Johnson.
She got an MA from the Institute. She was in my class. I was teaching philosophy. And Phil taught. Dr. Beagle talked, Rudy Valentine taught different courses, huh? So that was fun. It was a lot I enjoyed it. And then Swamiji went back to India. And in 1985, he calls me and says, Just, it's time for you to go back into the world. I said, really? Okay, where am I going? I'm going to Japan. But first I want you to live in the city for 6 months. He had a way of doing this. He wouldn't just throw you in the cold water. He gradually put you in and says, go live in the city for a while. Just get your feet grounded again. So we lived in a small apartment in Honesdale for 6 months. And he says, okay, now it's time to go. All right. And off we went for 2 years to Japan. That was an experience, living in Japan. Being they call a gaiji, a foreigner. Japanese men wear only 3 color suits. Dark blue, medium blue, and light blue. Nothing else. So here I am with my sport coat on. And if you want to really enjoy a restaurant experience, pick a soba restaurant. You know what soba means? Noodle soup. You're giving my story away. When you go in there, you're going to hear an interesting sound. And it's not the radio. It's people slurping. If you enjoy the soup, you slurp as loud as you can. And the cook is so pleased. Slurp, slurp, slurp. It was just a riot. So I had a good time. I tried to get as much as I could. I went to the University of Tokyo, took courses there, got into arguments with the Buddhists. That was fun. 3 nuns felt so insulted they walked out on class because I insulted the Buddha by saying he had the most colossal ego I ever heard of. He wanted to save the whole world. And the Irish teacher, he just loved it. We got along so well. And I took classes in Buddhist history and Shintoism.
Didn't you go on a meditation retreat there too?
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's a good story.
Buddhist. So this Catholic priest, who I got to know from the college, the graduate school I was attending, we hit it off. And he says, I'm going to do a Buddhist retreat done by, get this, a Catholic priest. I said, what? I got to see this. So I said, will you ask them if I can come? They weren't sure about me because they only wanted meditators. I said, meditators? You know how many years I've been... So he said, okay, we'll take a risk on this guy. So we took the train all the way up into the mountains. Nagoya, that was the place. Yeah. So we're up there, and there are about 35, 40 people. All Japanese except for this Catholic priest and myself. And the first thing I picked up about it, these people are just like, oh, let's get going, come on, we gotta get going. It's like, I'm late, for a very important date, running around like that. People, slow down. So we got our rooms, on tatami mats, of course. And we went to the first lecture given by this Jesuit who ran the place. I thought, not bad. It's okay. The fun began at lunchtime. We all go in. Now we're total silence, huh? For the week, total silence. It was fine with me. So we go to lunch, and I'm watching people. And I'm just taking my time, enjoying it. Nice food. And they come by with seconds, and I said, no. They were upset I would not take second because I hadn't finished the first. I got reported. Can you imagine? I got reported. The second day they tried me again. Again, I refused seconds because I was still on my first. Everybody around me was thinking, relax people, relax. Literally everybody finished their plate and I'm halfway through on my first. They had seconds and thirds and I refused. You know what they did the third day? They made me eat alone in the kitchen. Because I was out of sync. This is Japan. The odd man stands up, gets hit over the head. That was me. I already said, this is going to be an interesting week. Because I already wasn't fitting in. Because I was enjoying my meal in silence. And everybody out there was racing through. And it was even encouraged. This is what, it was not, they weren't trying to slow them down, modify, no, this was encouraged. I said, no. Then we got assignments. We had to do cleaning, karma yoga. And I was assigned to dust this one picture for 15 minutes. I said, dust it for 15 minutes? I'll have it dusted in 15 seconds. So I noticed everybody's kind of looking at it then. I snuck back to my room and did breathing exercises after I dusted it for 15 seconds. I'm sure that caught their eye too. How can you stand there and dust something? But that's what they wanted. Things are regimented in Buddhism. So we went on and on and on like that. The master, you were allowed to sign up to have an appointment with him so you could break silence. And I said, I don't need to. Because I tell by what he was saying, I was way ahead of him. So I didn't sign up. And they noticed that. This American isn't signing up. Get him to sign up. I said, okay, I'll sign up. I go in. Hi there. And we sit down. And then I made an error. Only one. We were talking about consciousness and how it expands and evolves. And I said, I see. And I said, I'm just curious, do you work with chakras? Never talk about chakras! Literally, he was like that. I scared the hell out of him. I said, pardon me? No, don't go near chakras. No, never do that. That's not good.
It's not good.
That's not good. I said, so you say, sir. So I think they were very glad to get rid of me. So I left after my experience, came back. Now, the young American priest who took me there, he's reached Satori. That's their word for enlightenment. So I couldn't resist. I said, you reached Satori. So you're enlightened? Yes, it's been authenticated. I beg your pardon? Well, you have to have it authenticated by the teacher, and he signs it. You have this. You can show this now. I'm enlightened. Oh, are you? Amazing. And do you know the future? What do you mean, know the future? Yeah, it's on the calendar. And that's not what I meant. Do you have I don't mean to pry, forgive me if I'm intruding, but do you have any certain powers or anything? What powers? I said, oh, you're enlightened, huh? I never forgot that. I just laughed and laughed afterwards. I don't know what that meant. Seriously. But it was authenticated. He's got a manuscript saying that he's been enlightened. Satori. Good. I'm glad for you, sir. So that was Japan. Did I tell you why I came to St. Paul? I knew at 9 years old I was to come to St. Paul. was in the gang, a bunch of the guys we played with. We played the game one day. What are you going to be when you grow up? Where are you going to go? And we all just went around and said, well, I'm going to go there. And I said, and it came to me strongly when I was 9. Get this. I said, I'm going to go to Notre Dame. I'm going to travel around the world. And I'm going to live in St. Paul. And I said, St. Paul? What's that? Look at that, huh? So when I finished my tour of duty in England, after being overseas for 4 years, Swami says, where do you want to go? I said, St. Paul. He said, okay, start a center. All right, I'll start a center. So Davey and I started a center. That's how it all started. We came here in 88 and got rolling about 91. That's when we got into Summit. When you reach a certain level, you can select an aroma that is your signature. I love that. Your signature. And you could be here and send that signature to Alaska to a friend, and they would smell the aroma in the room. And they'd say, oh, she's thinking of me. His aroma was sandalwood. And one Guru Purnima day, I don't know if you people were there, we had potluck out on the front lawn. Maynard calls me over and says, Jess, do you smell it? I said, oh my God, sandalwood, he's here. And I thought, am I making this up? And then 2 women who didn't know anything comes by and say, where's that sandalwood odor coming from? I said, he's here. Now wait, it gets better. So I'm smiling, looking around for any kind of sign. Nuts, just odor. And we go in the house. And Davy wants to chant. Wait a minute. The sounds are too strong. It sounds like I got twice the many people in this place. I look over at Davy. She admitted it too. Where are all these voices coming from? And I'm looking around, I said, what's going on here? In the audience was a woman who was very psychic. And afterwards, she came up to me and said, I don't know if you know, but we had some visitors in the living room. I said, tell me more. She said, well, I smelled this sandalwood. I thought it was burning in front of me. And I looked around and I saw all these ethereal spirits singing. They all wore dhotis, and shawls. I said, really? Yeah, she said, there was about 20 people all around the outskirts, around us. And up in front, 4 feet off the ground, was Swami Rama in active meditation. That was one of the highlights of Summit. And one night, I was meditating or something in the living room. And to get into the bedroom, you had to walk through, a doorway. And all of a sudden, somebody walks through. Oh! I go running. Yeah, nuts, they vanished. I'm wondering, who's that? Yeah, we had a visitor that night. This is a beautiful question. What's the most important thing to do for your children as we raise them to help them on their journey? What's so important is to help them build their own self-confidence. This is a rough world out there. Huh? Not to be afraid in this world. Or not be afraid to stand up to bullies. That's important. Don't let anyone ever talk nasty to you. Just encourage them, to be strong that way. And they've got to see that you are consistent in your life. Because they look up to you so intently, huh? So in your ethics, in your style of living, they see, yeah, she walks her talk. That's important. I think the kids got to see that, because you're the ideal for a while. I think they lean on you. Then because of that strength, then they can branch out and begin to explore other avenues, but based upon the foundation, your love and confidence instilled in them. Okay. What does it mean to purify the nadis? Nadis? What are nadis? Okay, that's the old yogic expression for the channels of energy. And that's an interesting word, purified, because I don't think you can purify. I wouldn't use that word. You got a bad diet? Negative thinking? No? That disturbs everything, from your endocrine system to the way you sleep. That disturbs the nadis, which convey the energy that keeps you alive. They're the very subtle conduits, like the electrical wires that keep everything going in here. See, those are the wires in use, so to speak, but they're not material. If you were to reduce our tradition back to the basics, here's the way I would do it. We follow two methods to discover and express the path of our tradition. First, you have to know what it's about. It's theory. Because without theory, you can't inspire. You can't start with practice, because you don't know what you're practicing for. So I disagree with some teachers that jump right into practice. No, you got to explain the vision of the tradition. And hope that will inspire people to want to practice so that they can actually experience the vision. Does that make sense? So the first thing is, as I say, theory. What is it? Why bother? Oh, all right, I'm willing to buy. Now what do? Now you practice. Now we give you the concrete, what they call the sadhana, the practice. And finally, what's the goal? I'll give you a new word today. To flourish. Take the experience of a mother and a father who have raised their children with all the trials and tribulations. They've worked so hard, they've loved them in rainy weather, in snow, and sunshine. And all the kids have turned out to be decent human beings, self-respected, and so on. And they can sit there and think, wow, we did it. And they can be so proud, and they can simply flourish in that knowledge. That's flourishment. So they've brought their nature as parents to fulfillment. And here's the living proof. We work on ourselves the same way. And you hopefully enjoy the trip as you're going. You slip and fall, so what? You learn a lot on the way. Even though you can read about it, doesn't make any sense until you practice it. So, our path is meant to be one in which you take the vision, do the practices, therefore you verify it, you confirm it. In that way, you make the truth your own. You're not just spouting it intellectually. You do it you prove it to yourself. You're from Missouri. That builds strength and confidence, self-reliance. Hey. And you know where you're at. You know how to measure it. It's that simple. That's what the path is all about. You want to get to the stage where all the powers are sprouting. Now, let me give you a very crude example. Take your hand. You can move the fingers, turn it around, lift something up, push, and leave it there. You don't have to be proving anything to yourself. You've got the dexterity. Now, instead of dexterity, put the word flourishing in terms of consciousness. All your powers are opening. You can use them anytime you want. They're always there. You can't lose them. They won't betray you. They're there for you to enjoy on your terms. That's what self-realization is all about. In our tradition, we have teachers, masters, and sages. You've never heard this before. I'll tell you the difference. Some of you are teachers already. You've been trained. You know how to instruct. Fine. Phil Nurnberger's a teacher. Dave Beagle's a teacher. There's a certain level of competency and understanding. Makes him a teacher. But what's a master? Master's building on what we already have as a teacher. You can always recognize a master by three qualities. First one, he's clairvoyant. Clear seeing into the future, into your past, into the present. He can tell you your past completely. He knows you. He can tell the future at least up to 2 years. Second point, he or she is unselfish. That's the most dangerous one, because you can sometimes have clairvoyant people who are selfish. I've met them in India. They could read your future. And I would urge you, I can't urge you enough, if you ever find your teacher selfish, flee. Get out of there. Because he'll exploit you. Sooner or later. And the last one, which is an unusual quality that I think is found in masters, is that they will never rob life. By that I mean, if they haven't had a meal in 2 days, they will not steal. They will take their chances with life. They will never rob life or people. Now I have 2 stories to tell you about Swamiji and robbery. Swamiji was walking along the Ganges and he got lost one day. He was out, playing around, told his master, I'm going out. He said, go ahead. And he got lost. He'd never been around this region. There were no villages. So his garb would not attract a grandma who would say, here, have some sabzi, He hadn't eaten for almost 48 hours. He had the Ganges to drink, but no hot tea, no chai, and no food. And he started blaming the sages. How could this happen to me? I'm the son of the great sage here, And he hears something. And he turns. And there is a hand coming out of the Ganges River with a bowl. And he looks. And the hand is moving towards him. An arm. Female. He could tell right away. How he knew, I don't know, but he could tell it was a female. Probably had lovely fingers, She came with this. And she went like that. And of course, Swami grabs it. And he thinks, oh, if only this had some sabzi. Suddenly appears in the bowl. Oh boy. How about a little dal? Dal appeared. Oh boy, huh? How about some carrot halwa? Boom, boom, boom. Anything he thought showed up in the bowl. Oh my God. Tucked it under his arm. Now he kept walking. He said, are you hungry? What would you like? He's like, who's this guy? Yeah, I'm hungry. Tell me what you like. Well, I'd love some basmati rice. Here. Never would come. Pretty soon he was feeding everybody on the beach as he'd walk along, showing off his bowl. This is my bowl, my bowl. Can you imagine? So he decides he's going to tell his master. Some special being in the ocean, in the river, took care of him and gave him his bowl. So he goes back to this, finally figures out where he's at, and he gets back to his cave. His master's sitting there. Oh God. Come here, son. Give the bowl back now. But it's mine! No, it's not. You didn't earn it. It was a gift. A temporary gift. To prove to you that you never have to worry about anything. You will always be taken care of in some way or another. But now it's time to give the bowl back. I don't want to. You heard me. So he goes out. He still doesn't want to give up the bowl. And the hand comes out, waiting for the bowl. He comes up to him. All right. I don't know if she waved, but she took the bowl, went back out and down. How about that one? No, the sages actually are like his master, the ones up in the high caves that he visited, totally, there. And when you're in their presence, you will know it. God, you will know it. I haven't been in one, so I can't explain it. All I can do is, from this description of his master, the ones he's visited, and they're just, he said, you are put at such ease, and anything you want, you'd have. They could just pull it in, huh? Yes, sir.
I always had the feeling that someone was in charge of the solar system, or that it was built up that way.
It makes sense to me.
It's like this.
I think they all have different sections that you're in charge of this, you're in charge of that, huh?
Trees.
As I say, I'm pulling together some of the things we talked about the last few nights about going inside, working with the energies, becoming sensitive to their presence, their movement. Sound, motion, and form all go together. I know that sounds strange. But if I make a sound here, if I hit a chime, you hear it over there. Something had to move to your ear. And why is it the sound of a chime rather than the sound of a bell? Because that's its form. Got it? So, sound, chime, sound, form, and motion. When you say your mantra, that's what's happening. You're creating a sound which has a form, which is affecting what it's moving through. And that's why you're changed. Because you're receptive to that moving form of that particular sound. Just keep it simple. Sound, motion, form. In our tradition, we sometimes introduce people not but the sound, but with a shape. Maybe the shape of a chakra, huh? Because we find that this person is more sensitive to that read. But for the most part, 90% of the time, sound is easier to get. But your mantra has a shape. And one day you will see that shape. Exactly. As it moves through you. And as it affects you. And how it affects you. Physically, emotionally. Huh? You will discern that.